Alright guys, so we're finally getting back to the 1-ton truck here, doing a little bit of repair and maintenance on it. We've, in the previous episode, I tore out the scale V8 out of the truck, and we're working on getting an adapter plate thrown in there to still run the scale transmission with just an electric motor. The reason I'm doing this is we had a little bit of issues with some electronics, and the motor was encased in that scale V8, and it was just time. We'll just be running a brushed motor in it, actually the original brushed motor that was in it before. I'll go into an explanation as to what was wrong with it. You're going to laugh. Alright, so what we have here is the Holmes Hobbies Torquemaster Pro 540 30 turn. It's held up nicely, and it turns out what we actually had going on with this truck, and don't mind my slightly shoddy connections here, these should be soldered together, but I have them just butt connected together for now. It turns out it was just out far enough to not make a proper ground, and that's why the motor wasn't working. We've got the ground wire hooked back up and turned the ESC on. Motor works just fine. I'm still happy with the decision to kind of revamp this truck and make it into a more serviceable everyday rig. We're going to be using this truck to kind of do like scale hauling. I've never done a stock style setup with the servo along with running a scale transmission. So we're gonna, as we get into this, we're gonna kind of see where things fit. So I'm gonna get the body off the truck. So here's the gear that's driven by the electric motor. See the teeth there. The output from the electric motor drives this gear and drives another gear, which sends power through the transmission. This kind of acts like your flywheel or your flex plate on a real truck. Only the difference is the teeth are not used for your starter, they're used for the output shaft on the electric motor. Now the easiest way to set the gear mesh on these, because once you put the adapter plate on you can't get access to things, is to actually pull the gears out of the transmission, which I'm going to do now. There you have it. This adapter plate sold by RC 4-Wheel Drive allows you to run just the electric motor and not the scale engine. As you can see, the bolt pattern is the same as the bell housing, which obviously is the same as the back of this motor, back of the block. So get rid of this, it's going in a rat rod project. Okay, so what I'm going to do is take the transmission gears and put it in the back of the, bearing in the back of the adapter plate. So what this allows us to do outside the truck, that'll allow us to get a good gear mesh on things. And the reason for doing it this way is outside of the truck, you have access to the mounting holes for the electric motor here and here. Once you mount this onto the bell housing, you no longer have that access. There's actually no way for adjustment. So, okay, so I have the plate mounted loosely, snug enough that it won't fall out of place as I move it around. And one thing you need to pay attention to is there is a little bit of like a bearing slop between the housing, the shaft. It's inherent in this design, and it does this too with the scale motor. But you just got to make sure that when you align these gears, you just kind of got to go by feel and by sight, and make sure that you're not pushing down on it too much one way or the other. All right, guys, this looks pretty good. Everything turns nice and smooth. Now once we get this back into the transmission, that slop's going to come out of that gear and everything will be perfect. So I'm going to slap it in the truck, put it in the transmission now. The machining is pretty spot on. Pretty happy with that adapter plate. So we'll get her all bolted up and put some electronics on it and make sure everything turns nice and is free. binding. So, all right. So we've got the mounts on, and the plate is attached to the belt housing, and the motor is attached to that. So I've got everything is just mocked up and loose. I'm going to finish tightening everything down and throw the bolts in the mounts to the frame, and then we'll go on to testing and making sure there's no binding. Make sure the motor's putting power to the transmission smooth and everything's turning the way it should. So. Okay, I'm throwing the last bolt in the mount here, and then we're going to get on to doing an electrical test on this before we throw the cross members in there and button this thing up. Alright, so we're ready to rock and roll here. We got the ESC hooked up, our motor wires all hooked back up, and the drive shafts are not hooked up. We have motor, transmission, and transfer case now not going to anything. We're just going to make sure everything runs smooth and go from there. So this cross member does not fit with this setup. It's not really needed. It would have been a nice place to mount a servo, but at the same time, it doesn't matter for the servo either, because it does not leave enough room between the motor and the other cross member to actually mount it that way. So we're flying by the seat of our pants here, and we're going to end up mounting the servo the way it would be mounted if you were running the scale motor anyway. No biggie. Okay, so the front steering servo is in. Just gonna snug them down a little bit. So we're definitely gonna have to do something with the steering here. As you can see, I've already got this crazy amount of spacers here to jack up the steering length there to get over the leaf springs. Couldn't run it underneath because of just the super steep angle that things were at with the lift. This lift is kind of makes things pretty difficult to get geometry correct, but it's cool when it's working right. So anyway, I'm gonna try and assess and figure out what we can do. What we're gonna do is we're gonna end up taking the lift out of this and bring it back to kind of a work truck style, more stock height, ride height. So there it is in all its glory for the last time. Pretty soon it'll be dropped back down and won't be looking quite as tough, but all right, see you next time. Enjoy your day.